times, but you got to dispel the spellboundness of the wizardry of propaganda in order to see the dispensation.
I love it. All
Because
right, we're
the
live.
disp- yeah,
All right, so, ladies and gentlemen, back by popular demand, we have the legendary Kimo Wasabe. We're not going to tell you who he is or what he is. He is an enigma in of himself. That's all I can say, honestly. But Kimo is offered to walk us through some topics over the coming weeks and months, hopefully. But today, we want to focus on two things: how the world really works and what Kimo refers to as the dispensation of time. So, many of you who know me and know what I'm about, I am proud to say that I have started and working on popularizing what I call the post-truther movement. And the post-truther movement essentially is the fact that it's a state of mind where one who knows the basics of what's going on in the world, or we think we know the basics of what's going on in the world, hits a point when simply complaining online and sharing doom porn with your friends about adrenochrome and all of that stuff gets a little dark, and it gets to the point where it doesn't really offer much in the way of answers and solutions. So that's what we're really hoping to do with Kimo, both now and hopefully in the future. So we're very lucky to have him on. Welcome, Kimo Wasabe. How are you doing today?
thank you very much. I'm here, and I call it the dispellation of the dispensation of times to dispel the spell. Everything is inverse here. I tested it again and again, 1,000 times and more. And I found that people don't really know what's going on. I don't care who they talk to. Michael the Archangel, the Palladians, the Pleiadians, the Channelers, Cryon, go follow Cryon. The truth is whatever is being channeled through a person is only as good as the amount of truth the person holds within them. And if they don't hold a lot of truth inside them, it doesn't matter. Even God can channel through a person, but if they're, how would I say it? If they're not holding a lot of truth inside themselves, they have a lot of false beliefs in them. The message gets filtered through those false beliefs and it comes out sideways at best. Most of the time it's inverted. And then the listeners are interpreting it based on whatever experience and knowledge that they have. And that is mostly not based in factual truths. So people are just passing around garbage, and doesn't matter where it's coming from.
All right, well,
I would
Kimo,
say 95%. Go ahead.
yeah, so on the garbage topic, so Kimo, I watch Alex Jones and David Icke, okay? So I think I have a pretty good idea of what's going on. So let me walk you through what I know for certain, 100%, and then you can tell me why I'm wrong, even though I'm obviously not, because I'm well educated. Kimo, I believe that. Oh, gotta mute that. Oh,
Well,
can you mute that?
yeah. Here, Bruce.
Yeah, you want him on the call?
Yeah. Bruce, how you doing? I'm on a call with Donnie. Jump in. It's not Skype. He's on OBS and I'm on Zoom and you're on Skype. It's a kind of a real-time live program.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Do you want Bruce on? Can he join?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, he's on Skype.
I'm gonna shut the stream down. We got to start it over.
You sure? Okay. Okay, he's going to go.
He's coming?
All right. No, he's going to go.
Okay.
He's gone. All right.
All right. It's all good. Yeah, we'll do that another time. But yeah, so my understanding is that we have a world elite. We have the World Economic Forum, and they want us to eat bugs and be in cities. And Klaus Schwab is the head, leading us all into a world of chaos and uncertainty. But then we have this great global awakening of people like Alex Jones and all of those guys who are exposing the globalists, the cabal, who want us to eat bugs and live in pods. And so, Kimo, I think I'm part of the Great Awakening by listening to people like Alex Jones. And, he's been censored a little bit. Yes, he's back on X, but, because he's been censored, he's definitely the truth, right? Am I wrong, Kimo?
Well, about 85% of what he says is true. About 85% of David Icke is true. You'll find people who feel they're 100% right, and they'll say, "Don't listen to those two guys." Well, I don't like to put negativity on anything, but sure. If you scour through news articles and go to Drudge Report, a lot of Alex Jones's stuff is from Drudge Report. They're scouring through articles to create their content. They don't have investigative journalists running out there. And you can listen to the other people on Alex Jones's show, and they're kind of, I don't know, trying to do an academic approach to everything, but they're doing it in a room every day. There's a lot of time commitment to trying to put out something every single day. And so what people do is they supplement their shows with outsiders who are the cosmonauts of investigations to bring that information out to the public.
Okay.
And that probably that's probably where you get the greatest information, is when people who do, like, they start in Colombia and they work with the immigrant trail all the way up to America, and then they hang around the border towns and show what the NGOs are doing and the buses and the government paid chartered airplanes and kids just disappearing into no man's land, but no one's really following where these kids end up going. And are all the kids accompanied or not? I mean, there's a lot of questions that are not being answered. And so there's a lot of guessing that's going on along with the actuality of things. And so it makes it very hard when a lot of claims are made as to what's really going on. And a lot of it is guesswork, and in conjunction with the factuality of things. Mm-hmm. And when you're relying on articles that are written and posted on the internet, you have to realize that those people who are doing that as well are not investigative journalists. A lot of them are just being given the information, or they're compiling it from other articles. And think of it like sanitation plant. All the toilets are dumping into the sanitation plant, and it's just putting out all the stuff, and hopefully some of it filters clean water. So the filtering process, in order for a person to really do it correctly, is a massive undertaking for themselves. And so no one really ever finds out what's really going on. It's just a lot of guesswork, a lot of subjectiveness to the whole thing.
Okay.
Which gives credence to the agencies to demand censorship of what information is being put out, because they can legitimately say that what's being put out is incorrect.
Right.
And the truth is that if everybody's focusing on the same thing, it'll become a reality. It'll actually physically come into materialization. But then there are things that are going to become reality regardless of what people think. Yep. Because they don't know where to look. So it's a lost society on a planetary scale.
Okay, so just to jump in there. So if somebody were to ask you, Kimo, how do you see the world in terms of the control structures, the elites, who's really running things? How is it really running? What comes to mind first for you?
Bad actors and bad perceptions. the perspectives are incorrect in the way to look at things, and it creates a malformation of an idea, a malformation of a memory, a malformation of what event happened versus what really happened. Everything becomes subjective, and then the truth, the true truth, is in the background, behind the scenes. And to dig into that, to find that, the only way I knew how to do that was to go into my spirit within, because my spirit within isn't a liar. It won't lie to me, and it won't lie to other people. It won't accept a lie. My spirit within, I started to realize, was connected to something called a soul. I'm not quite sure what that is, but the soul, think of it like pure truth. Let's just call it pure truth. It's not corruptible. So if a person chooses to do a lot of bad things and becomes a bad actor, their spirit within, think of it like it gets buried underneath all the nonsense. And the person has to willingly and willfully go through the nonsense to get to the spirit within, to bring it forward. And then they may have an opportunity from there, most likely not, but may have an opportunity from there to connect to soul. And this is what people talk about, finding God within their heart.
Okay, so you
these
don't,
terms that, go ahead.
Just to cut in, so you don't see the traditional conspiracy or truther model as correct, that we have these, the power elites are the central banks, or, the three-letter agencies, or the WEF, or Klaus Schwab. Like, do you still think those people are part of the puzzle, but it's incomplete? Or do you think ultimately they're just, I guess, figureheads that aren't really part of what we're facing here on the planet?
They're bad actors acting in bad faith for their own personal interests, but they're trying to manage a machine that's so gigantic that their intelligence and IQ, it doesn't have the capacity to move it or manage it. That is really, these things that you mentioned need absolute cooperation from the masses. And the only way that they can try to produce that is through censorship, propaganda. And the only way they can do that is through a Marxist, tyrannical control over information, so that they create a lane in which it appears that they're managing these massive money machines, but in reality, they're chasing its tail. It's running itself. It's so big.
Okay.
And so you have to ask the question, who's really running it then? It's like artificial intelligence. It's running itself. And so they chase it ultimately they have to chase it with money. And the only way they can do that is print their way, throwing the bills on the ground and racing towards that tail like the yellow brick road by printing fiat dollars that have no value. And they're not tied to any asset.
Yep.
So they create a road of fiction. So it's a fiction that if there's a massive event that occurs to Earth, which happens from time to time, then this whole house of cards crumbles, and people really kind of reset automatically after that, which is typically in the past becomes an agrarian society living in caves and starting over again. And the way this earth is, in looking at its history, it's going to happen again. So these bad actors, bad players, acting in bad faith, thinking they're controlling everything, they're on an egotistical ride that's being fed to them by energies and sources that are not seen, which are only responding to the desires and will of the physical humans that are at play with each other. And so this whole funny illusion of Luciferianism and its beliefs, everything is hiding behind that illusion. Mm-hmm. What's behind that illusion are weak-minded humans with 100 IQ and beings that have an IQ of at least 1,000 and live and live and live beyond and beyond and beyond for millennia. And who's going to win? There's a point where these intelligent beings just kind of throw their hands up and like, well, these humans, they have free will. It is a free will arena. And there's only so much we can do by law. And so the buffer between a lot of these beings and the human, that buffer in between is this Luciferian concept, this belief system. And it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's hard to go beyond this because it's like people's brains are flipping in their head right now.
Well, let's just chunk it out really slowly here. So you said several things that are very interesting to me. One of which is, it's clear that you agree that, you know, the people and organizations that we can actually see, namely, you know, World Economic Forum, Council on Foreign Relations, you know, Trilateral Commission, you do acknowledge that these people are bad actors and are part of the problem.
They're bad actors acting in bad faith, not serving the people, but are self-serving a God that doesn't exist, mm-hmm. that they call Lucifer, or that they call God the Father, or they call Jehovah, or Muhammad, or Allah.
Okay.
You know, the human mind does not have the capacity to determine what the ultimate source of all things are. It was never meant for the brain to comprehend that or to visualize it. So what people have done is they've humanized this source into a being, a male being, and it doesn't exist in that manner. Mm-hmm. You find it inside you. You find it inside your heart. And it's more like an energy field. And this is not wokeism and it's not new ageism. It is just a fact. And the psychonauts out there running their psychedelics, they're not going to reach a level of spirituality through those plant medicines, though they think they are. Because I'll tell you a story. So one day, a person joins into the government, and they came from the modern world, middle-class family, and they only knew what was in the news and what they learned in school. And now, all of a sudden, a folder comes across their desk after they've gone through an extensive investigation, and it says secret. And they read that, and all of a sudden they think they're getting information that nobody else knows. And so that puts them in a position where they know something you don't know. And psychologically, that puts them in a position where they think they're at a higher state of consciousness than you because they know something you don't know. And as time goes on, they move up the ranks into top secret, and they get top secret folders on their desk, and now they know more than the people who know secret. And the secret think they know more than those who hold a confidential. And the confidential think they know more than the average civilian. And now you have a bunch of people running around who think they know more than us and think they know better than us. And the very ones that write these documents, as time goes on, they begin to think they know more than the writer of the document. Hmm. And that's called ego. And so the world is basically being fueled by people who think that they know better than anyone else because they read documents classified, secret, top secret, and then beyond that. And they know things you don't know. But if you were to sit them in a room and talk to them, you'd realize their IQs range between 100 and 180 at the top end. And you realize that when you meet these interdimensionals, that their IQs start at about 1,000 and go up. So who has the upper hand here? The human brain is like a laptop computer. It is just data in, data out. It can believe a truth and a lie at the same time. So what if all these confidential documents that are coming in and this person is reading all these things and they're all misinformation by 5 degrees, 15 degrees? The writers are now in control of the steering wheel, steering those who read this information, who think that they're getting the truth and that they know more than everyone else, and they're easily led by the nose. Mm-hmm. Now comes along these 1,000 IQ guys, and what if they start inserting themselves in between this process? And where do you think these guys could steer things and move things?
So just to cut in there, Kimo, so you think that the world and the world stage is ultimately that anybody that we can see, and that is labeled controllers are kind of middle management, as you're saying, and you think behind them are hyper intelligent entities. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, I've met them and I've talked to them, and they're amazing. And if you don't have the proper perspective of what they are, they will treat your life like a little ball being hit by a wiffle bat. They will come at you in ways that you have a hard time perceiving because they see too far down the road. So the proper perspective to look at them as is that they're divine beings. Everything is divine. The universe was made by divinity. And no matter what side of the fence one is on, whether it's the devil's side or God's side, they're all divine beings. And if you acknowledge their divinity within them, as you should acknowledge the divinity within you, and you must do that to yourself first and must experience it first before you can give it away, they have terrible outlook on humans because humans are highly abusive to them, treating them like they're demons and Lucifers to exploit their talents and capabilities.
Okay.
And there can become an entwinement between the human and them that is not so easily unraveled. And that's when you get the Catholic priest coming in trying to do the exorcism, and it's just creating a fight. And why do you want to fight these guys? Let me tell you, they're going to beat you every time. So you start to find out, well, I started to find out that the truth is that you got to find your divinity within yourself. And in so doing, you're able to see the divinity in others around you and in all things as well. And even in these ones that you call adversarial. And so when you listen to Alex Jones and David Icke, what is their pitch? Well, David Icke, it's the reptilians, and he never gives you a solution on what to do with them, but he just tells you that they're ruining us and our planet and our lives. And Alex Jones is God, get thee behind me, Satan. We are at war. And that's, boy, that is an unendable conflict that you will never win, because there is no winning in that conflict. It's literally an entwinement that doesn't unravel until you find your divinity within. And your divinity within is truth. And when you see truth, the true truth, you see them as their true stature. And when that's acknowledged and recognized, everything goes to peace. It's almost instantaneous.
Okay, but can you walk the listeners through this concept of interdimensional. So you're stating that you've seen them. For a lot of people, this is a very new and sometimes scary concept. So, like, maybe just high level, who are these beings? Where do they come from? And how involved are they in human affairs?
Well, it's just we start with what we can find out and what we know, because in order to really get to the truth of it, you eventually end up delving within yourself as a divining rod of truth to divine it out of yourself. Divine, again, the word. The interdimensional hypothesis proposed by a number of UFO people, like Jacques Vallée, suggests that unidentified UFOs, and it goes on and on. Like, we're talking about you. What about interdimensional beings? I don't care about them flying ships. They don't mean anything. Mm-hmm. Could invisible aliens really exist among us? Then you go through and you go, are creatures living among us in parallel dimensions? And what if, maybe U.S. hiding at UFO evidence? And then, look, in the end of the day, you end up with these funny videos like this that you can't explain. And you figure they're just CGI. So while we're watching this guy in the red circle is walking along, and then the guy is going to cross his path. And I have no idea what's going to happen, but this could be pretty funny. And then he disappears. What the heck was that? So it's funny. There's no information out there on it.
But you've seen these beings.
Yeah, I've talked to them. I met them. I didn't go out of my way to find these guys. They found me. I just happened to be in I would say, the wrong place at the right time. And it was almost done on purpose, like they wanted me to see them. Now, you have to understand, when you have an IQ of 1,000 and your memories go back to the whispers of before time, mm-hmm. with no break anywhere in it, and you're looking at a human being, you can look futurizing into what the potential of them can become, and then you can start moving them through their life in a way that they become awakened.
Okay.
And that's what happened to me. And the process was all trauma-based. It was because trauma creates a photographic memory, and it opens the person up to the inner dimensions. Because trauma, if it's induced hard enough, creates a near-death experience, and a person can translucerly move between the physical and non-physical at the same time, because the brain can believe a truth and a lie at the same time. It can also move through the experience of a physical and a translucent experience at the same time. So the brain is an amazing thing, but it's absolutely, totally limited.
Whoa, so
it is a third-dimensional tool that the spirit energizes. Now, if your spirit isn't in control of your mind, then something else will be. Because all it is an interface for the physical world. So there are other beings that will interface through your mind, and they do it in various ways. And boy, that's a whole nother topic we can talk about, but the information is not necessary. It's not needed, and it has nothing to do with finding the truth of all things. So,
yeah, I just want to unpack the concept of trauma quickly. So, we hear a lot of things like trauma-based mind control, MK Ultra, these types of concepts, right? And that a lot of the elites, we're told, are even intentionally put through trauma to make them mind control slaves. But you're saying, in addition, the act of being traumatized also gives people powers or new access to the brain that otherwise you wouldn't have. Can you just walk people through that in a bit more depth?
Yeah, I'll just do it really simple. The psychonauts out there, the psychedelic people with ayahuasca, DMT, mushrooms, marijuana, alcohol, it creates an altered state of mind, which is an altered state of chemistry, which each of these drugs or medicines produce have a different effect. And in those effects, people will start to see things from a different perspective. The trouble with it is when they come back out of the trip and they're into their physical body and normalcy, their interpretations of it are only as good as the amount of truth that they have within inside them, because they're literally divining into other aspects of reality, bringing it back into a human body and a human brain that can only interpolate it to the best of what information it has. And most of the information is inverted and incorrect, believing things that have not been looked at factually or been tested to its accuracy. It's subjectiveness. And so they start speaking in terms of what you will hear is we're all one and oneness. And in that, they justify being polyamorism with their marriages. And those very rarely last, those marriages, after that fact.
Yep, that's definitely the case.
And so you have to really... Am I the only guy in the room telling this stuff? How come I'm the only guy talking about this? What has happened to people where they can't find truth? They don't even ask the questions. It's very simple. What is, why is, and how is. So let's call it the WWW of truth. What is it? Why is it? And where is it? If you can't ask those three questions to your archangel, Michael, maybe you have something else saying that they are the archangel Michael telling you what to say. Because after looking at thousands of these proposals of information coming out of people in their channels, I have found nothing of value to find truth or to find myself or my center or my spirit within or my divinity within me, or some would say God in my heart. None of them talk like that. Well, so who is talking through them? There are a handful of people that do that, but these people are soul-centered. It's almost like they were, well, each one has their own story, but it's like they were designated to be that way before birth. So these would be the ones that you would call, in the American Indian term, Hyokas, where they see everything inverse from the mainstream society. And that's the closest I've been able to find information that can describe what it is I'm trying to tell people.
Yeah, well, I've really struggled with that myself. You know, we've spoken offline about the fact that, you know, since I was 12, I was digging into a lot of these concepts, and I've went down many rabbit holes, and it took a long time for me to realize that pretty much no one really has the answers. And, you know, the more you know about evil doesn't benefit you. In fact, I think it's a trap in itself to trap you in, you know, studying how evil people are and, you know, all of this stuff endlessly. And so I think people are very hungry for truth and connecting with their spirits. And but it's very tough, you know, like most people have a very materialistic worldview. Even Christians, for the most part, they believe, you know, in God, in the spirit realm broadly, but they don't really see how it applies to life on earth today. And there's, you know, I think the Christians do a lot of great things. A lot of my friends are Christians, but I think there's also room to connect with God. Like for me, I know God is living, and I know we can connect with God. And I think that's missing in a lot of what people teach. And so that's what I really appreciate about your work. But maybe we can go there. So I know you've spoken quite a bit about the fact that most of us have disconnected from God, source, spirit. I'd be curious, why do you think that is the case? Is that simply by incarnating? Is it because the people who are...
Let's bring Bruce in, and I bet he has a good answer for that. Let's see what he says.
Okay.
The reason I don't have that kind of like water now, do I need to be watching on the Zoom or like just
Oh, let me put you in on the Zoom. Let me send that over to you right now.
Okay, cool.
All right. I'm going to bring him in on Zoom, so give me a second.
Okay, no problem.
Ooh. Participants, okay.
I'm just going to mute you on the stream for a minute. So yeah, guys, Kimo has a lot of really deep things, as you can see, and so um, I'd love to hear people who are on the stream or later in the comments. You know, if you have questions for Kimo, we actually want to do a weekly questions for Kimo, but we're going through it slowly. Okay, okay. So I think we have Bruce joining here. I'm just gonna set things up. So I'm going to. Yep, no, I'm just setting up the stream, guys. Yep, 1 second. Okay, we got Bruce, Donnie. Okay, I'm just gonna stretch things out. Okay, we got the three of us on the stream. Boom. Okay, so the question was for Kimo and now Bruce. Bruce, we were talking about the fact that most of the people, quote unquote, truthers et al., don't really give us a lot in terms of spiritual connections and applicable advice that we can apply for our betterment and development. And so the question for Kimo was, Kimo speaks a lot about the fact that we are disconnected from spirit, and that most of the information that's being given to us is kind of materialistic in the material realm. You know, we have to fight the globalists, yada, yada, yada. And so my question for both of you was along the lines of, why are we disconnected from spirit? Is it these entities? Are they the ones that do it? Is it just by nature of incarnating? You know, is this part of a war we have to face? Why are we disconnected from spirit? And how do we reconnect with spirit or soul, God? What is the process?
Excellent questions. Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to come to a definition of what spirit is. Okay, and it goes through several layers or expressions. So the first expression of spirit is life. The fact that we're all here and we're all speaking together and these bodies are animated is evidence that there is spirit here. Second phase of spirit is your thoughts and your feelings. Okay, now this is where spirit gets knotted. Okay, and it gets knotted because we inject ourselves into it, which is an illusion. We don't really exist. We exist as a being. We don't exist as a construct. Okay, so that's the second definition of spirit, and this is where you get divination, prophecy, commiseration with entities, and all of these sorts of things. And then the final expression of spirit is the pure spirit, and this is when you have a connection with the divine. And that will literally manifest in your consciousness as a current of sound, different sounds depending on where you're hearing it from, and light, like literally. Like, so when they say in the Bible light, they literally mean light. So when I go into deep meditation, I see light. Like I see now, if I have a lot of stuff bothering me, then I will have a lot of imagery. It's like a dream space. And so what the meditation is doing is it's untying knots.
Okay.
I'm hearing a sound in the background there. And then the most peaceful meditations are the ones where you go into the primordial sound and the primordial light. And then from there, then depending on the direction of God, because the spirit is the essence of God or the thought of God or the language of God, you may get an experience suitable to you at that moment in your life. So, another way of approaching this question is I noticed very early on because I went left and right in my spiritual study.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I noticed, Donnie and Kimo, was okay, these dudes in the East, they're saying, don't get involved in politics. Don't get it. If you're going to be spiritual, don't be worldly. Go to a monastery, meditate 8 hours a day, become one of these super powerful Tibetan yogis or Vedic yogis or Taoist wizards. And that is your role. You don't commiserate with life. And your job is to separate yourself from the incarnation cycle here. And very specifically in these teachings, not interfere with the politics and evolution of society. Mm-hmm. You come over to the West, it's the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. From the Jewish root, you're not in contact with God unless you're deliberately changing or what they call bettering society. This carries forward to Christianity and it carries forward to Islam. So this is a question I've been wondering about for 35 years, ever since I got all my reading and research done in my mid-20s and got it packed into my head. Now, the answer I've come up with is it's both, but the worldly work you do, be completely detached from it. So you put your best effort into your marriage. You put your best effort into raising your children. You put your best effort into being a citizen, but don't live or die by the outcome. Okay? Your main job is just like the dandelion. All of those petals will dry. The wind will pick them up and they'll distribute and go and reproduce. That's what we have to do spiritually. We have to use this body to consciously transcend the body while we're alive. That's the job of, in my opinion, of what being a human being is. Now, to circle all the way back to what the alternative media has done, I think Kimo's 100% right. We've basically, when you look at human behavior, there's an inception point and then endless mimicry. So really, from the point of Shakespeare forward, there's been nonstop mimicry in literature. Everybody mimics Shakespeare. Shakespeare defined every major theme a writer can write about. If you think I'm joking about this, go get an English degree at an Ivy League university. The professors will tell you the exact same thing. Okay? Now, in the alternative movement, we got spiked or teed up, as Kimo Wasabe says, by guys like Alex Jones and David Icke.
Yep.
And so everybody is sort of mimicking them. I'm going to stop now. That's my answer.
Well, people don't know they copy somebody else.
Yes.
And we have a message that's being regurgitated that has no validity in it anymore because there are some basic truths in the universe that exist, that always exist, but they're not that many. And the rest of it is the truth of the moment, which turns to dust as soon as the moment's over. Are you the guy you were 10 years ago? What if you did a text on Twitter 7 years ago and you made a comment about Judaism, and today the ADL grabs that and says that you're anti-Semitic because of a 7-year-old text that you can't even recall, that you responded to something and maybe you were trying to bring to light something, but then they label you as anti-Semitic. Now we're dealing in smoke and mirrors. It's fiction.
Yeah.
There's no way to know. Truth is transitory. It changes all the time from moment to moment.
Still guilty,
so
though.
You can't. Yeah, you can't say I'm a truth seeker because the true truths, there's not very many of them. Because let's put it this way: the basic truths that it takes to keep the universe together and running, you don't need a million of them. Mm-hmm. Bruce was talking about that the other day. About the universe is really simple, and it's simple in its function and form and formulation, but yet the complexities that can come out of it are quite amazing. So we were talking about it in terms of computers. Ones and zeros, machine language, is all that's there is, and look what we're dealing with, ones and zeros.
Yep.
The truth is, it's just ones and zeros that are combined in ways that create this visual and auditory imagery.
Okay, so you guys know about the I Ching, right?
I've heard of it. Also, I'm checking out that book you recommended. What was it? The
I
Dragon.
recommend it.
Yeah,
Oh, Opening the Dragon Gate, yeah.
yeah.
Um, so the I Ching is the Chinese book of divination. And if you can just call it up, ICHING, and go to the images tab so people can see it, okay? Oh, everybody get this book. This is one of the best books I've ever read. Nobody knows about this book. It's the biography of the present Grand Master of the Dragon sect of Taoism. Three Taoist wizards knocked on his door when he was 8 years old. They saw him in a village, read his aura, and said, okay, this is what we can do with this kid. They knocked on the door, asked the parents for the kid, and the parents handed the kid to the Taoist wizards. Okay. And he spent his entire formative life being trained in the mountains of China by these Taoist wizards. They killed him 3 times. Very much like Kimo Wasabe says, one of the ways, and I'm almost hesitant to say this out loud, Chemo, because I don't want people putting their feet in a pail of water and putting car battery jumpers on it to try to see if they understand them spiritually. But they killed this guy like 3 times, right? They to force him to see the other side, and so this is the guy that teaches the guys who teach the guys who set the world standard for traditional Chinese medicine. He's the head guy. Okay. So now the I Ching is 3 sticks. They're either going vertically like this or horizontally like this, and they're put into groupings of 4. Okay. And you roll these coins to decide which one of them you read in the I Ching. So because you have 3 sticks, either vertical or horizontal, that's a binary system, right? There's only 2 choices, 0 or 1, horizontal or vertical. Now, the outcome of all the variations of the 4 combinations, vertical or horizontal, is 64. So what the Chinese created 2,500 years ago was a binary 64-bit divination system. Right? Everybody focuses on the Jews and astrology and gematria and the Zohar. Every society has yoked or pulled out some of the secrets of the universe and captured it. Okay? So it's absolutely fascinating. That is one of the best books I've ever read in my life. In fact, I think I'm going to buy it again and read it again. Yeah, I read that when I was like 23, 24. Donnie, I was in a daze for 6 months after reading that book.
Yeah, I got it queued up. I'm reading a book right now, Life Before Life, which is this social psychologist who uncovered like 1,200 cases of past lives and kids. It's very fascinating stuff. But
Yeah.
I think his name's Nathan actually on YouTube. He has he's allowed one of his students to teach his teachings in English, and I've been watching that guy's videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So,
Kimo, I'm muting you.
Going back to what you were talking about earlier with Kimo Wasabe, why is the world? First of all, you made a comment before I joined the call, which I absolutely agree with. And it's very important that I say this out loud on your podcast because of the books I've produced. Just like Gandalf says in The Two Towers, do not study the ways of the Dark Lord too much.
Yep.
Okay? Because as I say, when I did my interviews with you, Donnie, I was born into darkness.
Yep.
Bob saw that in me, which is why he decided to give me some of the tutelage on how to work with darkness as a spiritual path. But I was born in darkness, right? So I had to study it. And because it's used as a shielding force for so much of the stuff that's done in the world now, I was able, as I said, keeping true to my philosophy, I was able to give a social and political dispatch to the world. And there it is. Take it or leave it. I'm not going to live or die by this. My spiritual journey will continue. This is what I had to go through. in an upper middle class family in Ottawa that was integral in keeping this global system going and advancing the ball down the field in the globalization game through free trade. This is what I saw. This is what I witnessed. Here is my accurate testimony. I have not given false testimony, but I'm not going to live or die by it. I don't care if people believe me or don't believe me. The people who need to read that book will gravitate toward it. So that is my balance between the East and the West. And at the end of the day, your ultimate responsibility is the liberation of your consciousness from the illusion of physical form and the reincarnation side. You want to get to a point where you have enough spiritual clarity and energy that if you so choose, you can break the incarnation cycle. Now, Kimo Wasabe disagrees with me on this. He thinks that reincarnation is sort of true, but not true. It's in the DNA, and we carry the lineage of our. There's truth to that as well, but it's a very complicated topic. I've been studying it my whole life, and I don't want to make it the basis of this podcast, which I've now, as I hear myself speak, I've rather rudely interrupted.
No, we love it. We love having you, Bruce. I know Kimo's a big fan. Everyone's we're a bunch of fanboys here of each other.
Well, I would not have been able to have written those books without Kimo. There's not only for counsel and advice and direction when I get blocked, but also for internal protection when I'm focused on the book and I may not be seeing things that are coming for me and stuff. Kimo's got my back. He's a real good two-man operator in the jungle.
That's for damn sure. So Kimo, I want to bring it back to what Bruce was saying and this concept that we are disconnected from spirit, unfortunately, right? You know, we are in a very dense realm here on Earth. You know, I think the Gnostics have some truth in that it does appear in some ways to be a hell realm. But then also, I think we've all experienced, like on the call here, the fact that there is divinity in this world too, and you have to find it, and you have to shape your perspectives, and you have to approach it. So, I guess Kimo, on that, what would you like to add?
Well, divinity is really a term I use for divine love. It's just divine love. It's like saying Jesus Christ every other sentence. I can't even say it anymore. I feel like I'm swearing. So it's misunderstood. People don't know what divine love is. A lot of people claim it, but they don't own it. It's something that you have to become. So you have to master love. And actually, I found it to be a journey to the soul. That it's actually divinity, the divineness of the soul. I had to word it and frame it this way. So all the trappings of all the other terms humans use, like God and Spirit and Holy Ghost and Jesus Christ and divine love and all this stuff, I could not deal with the attachments people put to those terms. I had to find the true truth, and I had to come up with different terms. So I just used divinity. And when I got into my soul, I started to see things for what they really were. The more, okay, people talk about, I forgot your question. Say it again.
All good. Well, my larger question was with this concept of disconnecting from divinity and the spirit.
Disconnect from trauma, disconnects from divinity. So when you're birthed, you're born, you get spanked on the butt, scream. Well, you're disconnecting from spirit, soul. So you have spirit with you, but soul is disconnected from you. And as time goes on, with all the nonsense that occurs as a kid growing up, you get further and further disconnected from your soul, going into survival mode. And even in the best of families, that occurs. So by the time you hit the adult age, you have to understand that the soul is like a kid. It runs around like a child. It's always curious, like, what's that? What's that? And then adult, I know that. And so that's what's called ego. So the ego is the great separator. In A Course of Miracles, ego has a better idea about how to function your life than you going directly to God. So ego, it replaces the idea of God. And then when you make a mistake, ego says, I got a plan. That's how the Course in Miracles presents ego. So in order to overcome your frailties, it's a course in forgiveness, which assumes that you're in a course, that you're a judgmental being and that you're judging. Well, the ego has to judge things because it has to protect itself. And therefore, you're in a constant circle of judging and forgiving, and you'll never get out of it. Why not just become non-judgmental? Once you do that, you don't need a Course in Miracles anymore for the thousands of pages that were written and all the travels and travails and oh gosh, places you can travel to have meetings with other people who are all practicing the art of forgiveness. I'd hate to be in a room of people practicing the art of forgiveness. I wonder what they're really judging me as before they forgive me. It's a circle. So truth is not a circle. Truth is a straight line. It goes straight back to soul, goes straight back to divinity. It is the true north compass that points true north. And when all things are confident that the person has got it and that they're living by it consciously and willfully, that's when ego and other aspects of this human experience start to cooperate with you and come in alignment with you because they trust you. Humans are not trusted, so they're in conflict with their ego. So what is ego? That's a big topic. It's a divineness. There's a divinity in ego that a divine being holds the responsibility for and broadcasts it out. As people say, the Holy Ghost is something that broadcasts out. It is a broadcasting system. So is soul a broadcasting system as well? Is spirit a broadcasting system as well? Why aren't these questions ever asked? Because no one knows how to ask the right question. For in the question, you will find the answer. And that's when you start finding truth, because you already have the answer in you. You just have to knead it out of yourself.
Yeah.
A-N-E-E-D. Knead it out of yourself like kneading dough. So you're a dough boy. You got a dough mind. You're a Pillsbury dough boy.
I love it.
And it's, yeah. Now, when you do this with entities that you consider wicked, demonic, and evil, you'll turn them into pussycats because you're kneading their divinity out of them. K-N-E-E-D. You're kneading the divinity out of them. And as they begin to experience it, they need it. They become addicted to it. And in the divinity of all things act correctly, pointing to true north, cooperating with each other. As individuals cooperating together, pointing back to true north, source. So this idea that we're all one is we're all moving in one direction cooperatively, but we're all individuals. And psychonauts can't get that concept in their head. They'll just say, yeah, I got it. No, they don't.
Yeah, that's true. I know psychonauts, and I don't find them, they go on these journeys of the mind, if you will, that, okay, they sound really good on a podcast clip, but they're not really bringing anything back that I can apply practically. So I kind of turned off by the whole thing. But you spoke about ego there, and I want to dig into that a little bit more, because I think it's something that isn't really talked about in a way, again, that people can apply. For me, I've really enjoyed the works of Eckhart Tolle. I don't like everything about his approach, but this concept of presence, the present moment, and what I would call radical acceptance is something that's really helped me. And for me, Kimo, my read on ego, at least in my own life, is that it's almost a false self. It feels almost like a defense or protection mechanism that's been built as a result of trauma, and that it's a tool in a way to interact with the world, have an identity. Identities aren't all bad, right? And as Bruce is saying, I think we have to take the middle path, right? Both seeing the wisdom of East as well as Western religions and methods of of thought. But for me, what I've seen with ego is it's pathological, right? Within us, we all have a almost like a false entity, right? That is narcissistic and prideful and hyper insecure. The ego is hyper insecure, and the nature of ego seems to me to be perpetual discontent, even if it's small background, right? It's like, if only this thing right now was different, I would be happy. If only, the globalists or Klaus Schwab wasn't here or Trudeau was out of office, then I would be happy. But when you see through the nature of ego and be present, there's this state of consciousness where you just accept everything as it is. Everything is in its right place. And your mind can't comprehend it, but it's like this spiritual knowing where you're where you need to be at this moment. Everything is as it should be, and it's this radical acceptance. That's just been my take on it. Bruce or Kimo, what are your thoughts on that? Am I on the right track? How would you guys define ego here? It's a big topic, but yeah.
I'll take a stab then, Bruce. All right. First of all, radical acceptance, flush it down the toilet.
Okay.
The only thing I found in Eckhart Tolle is in the now, being in the now. That's all I've found that's helpful with him. Okay. He got stuck there, and everything else he adds to it is peripheral. Doesn't mean anything. Now, the second, at least that's what I've discovered by testing his stuff. Then the second is, as far as ego. So, in the Course in Miracles, ego has an idea for you, and it creates this idea of separation from God. And in this idea of it has a better idea for you, there goes the series of judgment calls that have to be made as you work your way through the human experience. And as ego grows in stature, and then we end up in this description of what a narcissist is, what you're describing are the demons that people call Lucifer and his angels. It's their profile, their emotional makeup, because they are not connected to soul, yet they are divine beings. And the whole idea of the devil in us is that it's not an idea, it's a fact, that the devil is a divine being. Even the Bible says he fell from heaven, so he still has a connection to his divinity. If you disconnected him from divinity, he would cease to exist.
The clearest example, Bob, is in the book of Job, where Satan has to ask God's permission to test Job.
And that is a sign of respect, and that comes from one divine being to another, respecting each other's position. They are bookends of the same thing. So when these entities, beings, they put the coat of demonism on them or Luciferianism on them, and then they work and influence ego in such a manner that when narcissism is explained that the person is a narcissist, they're actually psychoanalyzing the demon within, and it's not the human. Because that psychoanalysis of a human spirit, they are totally different things. Because the human spirit, and I'm not going to give away the secret on this, but the human spirit is connected to soul by a means which these extraterrestrials and demonics have no access to, because it's too high up for them. It's out of their purview, which exists within us. And that is how we connect. That is the reason why we connect to God within our heart. And what they're doing in essence is they're trying to reconnect through us, but they got to do it through themselves. They have to realize their own divinity within themselves, because all things in this universe were created by divineness. No matter how dark or how light it is, it's all coming from divineness. Yeah. And all we have to do is acknowledge and recognize within ourselves our own divineness. And once we master that, we can give it away and we can give it to them. And then they will go back to their normalcy, and they won't be our antagonists anymore. They'll be our lions and tigers that we can pet and play with and purr at our feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they manipulate ego, and when you can do that with your ego, you can do it with them. All you have to be told is that you can, and they will comply. Trust me, they will comply. Now, Bruce can tell his experiences on that, but that was the genesis of the before the first word in the book, The Devil in Us, was written. This was the, I don't know, this I don't know, we call it a theory.
Yeah. Yeah, that the devil is a divine being and the demonic legion. So, you heard how I explained it, Donnie. I mean, you gotta look at it as a function of the macrocosm and realize that if it didn't exist, everything would fall apart down here. And you need the negative pole, so that and mastering your own negativity, which is also, as Kimo Wasabe says, about transcending your own ego. Doesn't mean you throw your ego away. Like, I mean, when I go out shopping for a new MacBook Pro, I mean, my ego is there to negotiate, right? I don't want to get ripped off.
Yeah.
But you got to be able to let it go. It's almost like pick it up, like what Christ said about his physical life. I pick it up, I lay it down. I pick it up, I lay it down. Right? That's the relationship you should get to with your ego. Yeah.
So when you can get your ego to follow you and put your feet and be your protector, if you can do that with ego, imagine what you can do with beings who are seeking reconnection back to true north. They become your best friends.
Yeah. And when you look,
this guy, go ahead.
When you look at how the devil is used these days, I mean, it is the principal marketing tool of the Vatican right now. It is the principal marketing tool of a lot of these evangelicals and the really big guys with the 1.2, 1.5 million YouTube channels. It's 90% demonology, what they're talking about now. Mm-hmm. Now, some of the stuff is good. Like it's like panning for gold. You can listen to it, but keep that metal dish with the holes in it moving and sift all the garbage out and try to find the gold, right? The nugget, or the gold dust. But I mean, they're all, some of them you can almost like they're smiling when they're talking about it, right? Because they're quietly acknowledging that, without the devil, I wouldn't have a 1.5 million subscriber YouTube channel.
I'd be out of a job. Yeah.
And then they're trying to make themselves look powerful and important. Like, I can teach you how to conquer the devil and all. And I think a lot of those people are setting themselves up, because you can't really beat the devil. You got to make your peace, I think what Kimo Wasabe gets at. You got to make your peace and your truce, and you can't beat the devil. And the Vatican, they got a new movie coming out with Shia LaBeouf on Padre Pio, 20th Century Saint. He was a very interesting guy. And they're really going to hammer this thing home, right? Like, apparently Padre Pio used to, other monks in the monastery could hear him physically fighting with the devil at night, like a husband and wife fighting, pots and pans flying around and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, I mean, that might be a little mental imbalance there.
Yeah. So a few questions there. Kimo, we're getting some background noise.
That's my hard drive.
Oh, okay. We're getting hacked in real time here. It's the Vatican. Yeah. So even I was Seventh-day Adventist for a while. I told you guys, and they argued that the Pope is like the literal Antichrist, and they actually have some good like biblical justifications for that. But one thing I that hit me then was this fact that most exorcist style possession happens within the Catholic Church, yes. Even and a lot of it's like Central South America, and
yes.
So
I could make $1 million a year down here as an exorcist.
Yeah. You're healed, right?
Oh my God.
Does that go back to the consent thing where, because you're giving spiritual energy to the church or, what have you, that you're kind of green lighting possession, or is it more nuanced?
What do you mean green lighting possession? I don't understand that. You mean like I support it?
well, you see
No,
even
you're talking about the Vatican and the
Oh,
people. Yeah.
like you
well,
see.
they just have a stance where they're in conflict with the demonic side, and it's sort of like, okay, if you want to think we're in conflict together, then let's create a conflict. And so they
Yeah.
play a game. So they're gamers. They love to play. Look, one of the things you don't want to be is bored in the universe, and so they want to play.
Yeah.
But they understand that a lot of this hocus pocus stuff we're going through is a bunch of BS, but they're willing to come in and play a game in any way they can because they hate being bored. They hate being stagnant because the pain of their disconnect from the divinity within them is so grandiose that they'd rather go out and play a game and be playing exorcism than sitting being nothing. It's like self-destruction for them. It's more painful than you could ever imagine. It's like they're being ripped apart. And so when you bring divinity back into them, they go to peace. They find their wholeness. They find themselves.
Okay.
That's where we are today on Earth. We have to pull this off here on Earth today. The position is, by all things that I have been seeing, hearing, and experiencing, is that it is way past due that we stop continuing these crazy exorcist games and start figuring out how to get along. And since we can't do that, you're going to see world calamities on a scale that are as they were in the past, as great as the past great calamities have been or are coming for us now in the future. And they're not that far off. Mm-hmm. We have over 9 billion people on the planet. Imagine the damage that's being done by 9 billion idiots running around.
Yeah. Well, clearly a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to so these are a lot of really high level concepts, right? So I just want to bring it down for the audience here. So if I'm hearing you correct, both of you, you're basically stating the case that, hey, we have demons and interdimensionals that are here, that are manipulating world affairs and people generally. And that
we have demons that are created by our attitudes and our outlooks and perspectives, and we personify that onto the interdimensionals, and so they play the game.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a soul. Stop thinking about soul and non-soul. He has a soul, he doesn't have a soul. It's called divinity.
Okay.
It's an easier term that kind of blankets everything, and it points to the fact that they are divine in their nature, and respect them as so, and they'll function as so. And what we have is a malformation of them because we're idiots and we want to go to war with them. Yeah. Imagine humans being on some other planet that has figured this out. We would be like a plague to them.
You know, the first thing the Jesuits did when they came over to the New World here, this is more of a Canadian perspective, Bob. We got the Jesuits before we got the Dutch and the English like you did in America. First thing the Jesuits did, and this is, you'll never find this in the history books, but it is true. I've confirmed it from numerous sources. They killed all the shaman. So they would go to the tribes, find out who the medicine man was, the person who really could leave their body, really was spiritual counsel for that tribe, poison them, kill them, disgrace them, run them off, do something like that, or her. Okay. And that's how they took over. That's how they destroyed, because I mean, the primitive cultures could handle all of this stuff. Now, here we are with our iPhones, sending satellites in, me talking on my Starlink, and all of this technology we have, but we're afraid of demons. But people who lived in caves 4,500 years ago, they mastered the demon thing. They didn't have to. How? Why is it so complicated for us, but they were able to do it? Well, this intermediaries come in and is exacerbating the situation and giving intergenerationally, multi-generationally now, like 20, 30 generations, the history of the Vatican, giving this very wrong information on what possession is and what the demonic realm is and all of these sorts of things. And more specifically, its purpose, right?
Yeah, well, we have a bit of a mix, right? We have the kind of atheist materialist worldview, right? Where possession, demons, this is just, aberrations of the mind. I've even heard people argue that it's simply malnutrition, right? And then we
Yeah.
have the religious types who have a general phobia of the demonic and demons generally, which I think is obviously justified and to an extent, and they basically think everything is of demons, these are demonic people's faults. But I'd be curious, so like I don't think a lot of people really realize how demons work and what they do, what their role is. That Bruce, in our previous episode together, you likened them to this concept of cockroaches or maggots. They're the cleanup crew, right? So you wouldn't become friends with a cockroach or worship a cockroach, or you want to stay away from a cockroach, but you understand that they form a purpose, and without things like cockroaches and maggots and scavengers, the world would be a pretty ugly and messy place. So
A lot more disease.
yes,
And a lot. Yeah.
so maybe you could touch about how. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, now first of all, this is a revelation I had writing The Devil in Us. If you genuinely get demonic entities in your life or interdimensionals masquerading as demons, you can call that a blessing or a spiritual victory, because what it will do is it will prove to you that the spiritual realm is real. And if your position prior to that was atheist, materialist, humanist, and Richard Dawkins, or that kind of flat line of consciousness, those demons have just bumped you up. Okay, and that's that. And when you finish your life and realize what they did for you, you're going to go, yeah, you know what? That intercession was actually a blessing, because I wasn't interpreting life really, really well. Now, generally, when you get demons in your life, you've done something to bring them in. Okay, you've done something to bring them in, and so the key is to figure out what you did. Okay, because they think of them like debt collectors. What's the debt? Like, what do you owe? Why are they there? Now, it may go back in your bloodline, because the Bible's right about that. The sins of the father are inherited by the sons and the grandsons, and the whole bloodline thing. So this is why a lot of people, and I think a lot of the people getting possessed now are having really, demonstrative demonic activity. There's a bloodline connection, because the demons, these interdimensionals and demons, they sort of exist in a timeless realm, so they can just pop into the family line at any point. And again, but ultimately, what it's going to do is expand your consciousness. But you're going to have to battle it. Another great book on demons, or another great spiritual treatise on demons, is The Life of Milarepa, the 12th century Tibetan saint. And he was encouraged to put 100,000 songs of Milarepa. Yeah. Now, Milarepa murdered over 40 people, members of his own family, because they ripped off his family land after his father died. His own uncles did this to him, and his mother became very angry and sent him to a black magician to study. And he became very proficient at black magic. And at 19 or 20 years old, he conjured a hailstorm at a wedding and killed like 40 members of his family. He repented and went into a purely contemplative life after taking initiation and getting instruction from a Buddhist, and went and lived in a cave. And the first three, if you read the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa, his first 3 to 5 years of life in the cave is just battling demons. And why were the demons there? Well, he just killed 40 members of his family, right? It just gives it to you right there, Now, this is a bit of a specious example, but in Mel Gibson's interpretation of the life of Christ in The Passion, you see Judas possessed after the betrayal. Now, there's a whole thing there about, I don't know what's true. Like, were Judas and Jesus actually in on it together? I don't know. But, so generally you do something to bring the demonic forces in. You forfeit your spiritual protection, and you have to atone to get that spiritual protection back, which is the part of yourself you've cut yourself off from through your behavior and through your actions.
Okay,
That sound about right, Kimo?
Yeah, that's right on.
Yeah.
It's a process. So if you want to connect your divinity within, it is literally a simple formula. It works every time. And the only way you can do it is, this is where divine love comes in. You must have that heart-filled divine love turned on. It must be on in order to pull it off. If it is not, then that's the focus, is to get that divine love machine working within you, in your heart. And sometimes people, they need assistance, and it has to be gifted to them from one who has it. So how many people out there in the world do you know has divine love in their heart that they can gift because they've mastered it? I only know one guy, and he did it to me, and I've done it to others. So it's passable, like a domino. So over time, more and more people will have it. Once this divine love is kicked in, it takes a while. You're going to have a million questions, and you got to have those answered so your mind will settle down and trust it. Once your mind starts to trust it, then your ego will follow along. But in the process, you've got to find a way to quell the ego so it doesn't keep stepping up and trying to take over the show. And there's a way to do that. And then ego will follow along. And then the emotions will follow. And then your psychology will start to follow along. And then your memories, that seems to be last. And in the process of all this, you're going to get all kinds of beings that are going to come in and test your sincerity. They're going to point out the weak points in you, because what they're looking for is their own divinity within themselves, but they have to be gifted it, given it to them. They just can't go grab it. And they're going to, through trauma, not through making you a billionaire, but through trauma, are going to need it, K-N-E-E-D, they're going to need it out of you. And as you follow the program and allow them to basically strip you of nonsense so that you can get to your soul, then you can gift it to them. And that's what they're looking for. This is my experience. This is firsthand. This is what I am doing and have done. And I will tell you, it is not for the weak or the weary. It is for me, it has been a very intense process. I had to do in 3 years or 4 years what takes a master up to 40 years to do. So it was really dense and concentrated and intense. And that is not something that a typical human can do. The body has to be built like steel. The mind has to be unrelenting, and the person has to be holding on to truth so hard that when the storms come, they just get stronger, holding to the truth, that it empowers them. These are not human traits. These are traits that are divine, that are given by soul. This is a soul covenant that not all can follow. I don't recommend it. It's way too hard. There are most people who are moving in this direction, they're in a period of their life where they can do it with relative ease and comfort. And it's meant to be that way. It's not meant to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. If that were the case, I would say 87% of the population of Earth would be dead. It's that intense. And so you have to be able to sustain the human race and sustain the interdimensionals and the beings and the entities in such a manner that this place doesn't blow up because of itself, for the sake of the play of the game, which is more important than any living being or energy or effication.
Yeah.
Period. The game is more important. Without the game, the boredom would set in, and that is like being ripped asunder. It's like tearing apart. You literally just dematerialize, and the pain is excruciating. So the game is extremely important, and how it's played is paramount to the success one has at gaining access to their divinity within.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a process by which I did it, and it had to do with money, it had to do with physical well-being, and it had to do with internal introspection of the spirit within. It's a three-pronged process, and the fourth leg of the table is myself, my willingness to do it.
Okay. Well,
it's the formula. It's really easy. It's a simple formula. Go do it now.
I'm on the long path, the 40, 50, 60 year path. There's only one Kimo Wasabe, man. Nobody, but he's been doing this in every facet of his life, like even going through bud school at 28. Nobody does that and gets through with no injuries their first try. Nobody does that. Okay. So it's not a huge surprise to me that he would approach spirituality the same way. But Bob, I'm glad to hear you admit that it might be non-replicable, except maybe for your bloodline, like your son or, people like that. But, it's like, it's intense, man. Like I've known Bob since he's been going through a lot of this, like, 3.5 years ago. And, I would have folded up shop and crawled into the woods and died in a ravine or something, 100%. I never would have made it out. Ever.
Yeah, it's a full circle. I've come back.
Yeah.
Bruce has watched me go from a luxurious lifestyle to living in a camper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Losing everything, everyone, children, family, friends, all my belongings, my income. I've lost everything. Some of it I gave up, and some of it I had to run away from, and some of it was ripped out from me.
Yeah.
My licenses, my ability to generate an income have all been completely removed from me.
Yeah, you are a kind of Job for the 21st century, Bob.
Yes.
You really are, actually. I say that as a compliment, too,
Yeah, it's true Job's life.
Yeah.
But I'm glad at the end of the day, Job got scolded by God, and God is just telling me he's going to squeeze out everything he can from me because he invested a lot into me, which means I have nowhere to go but to put this out. I have nothing else. Nothing.
Okay.
This is the only direction I can go.
All right.
Also, I should also point out, Donnie, that when I feel one of these books coming along, I fight it. Like I don't want to write them. Right? Like this is my talent. This is what I have to put forward. This is what the divine wants of me, but I'm never happy about it. Like when I finish The Devil in Us, I'm okay, that's it, man. This is the last one. Thank God. Let's go write a murder mystery under a pseudonym, try and make some money. And but you do what you're told to do, right? And really once you develop that connection, you got to do what you're told to do. And if you don't, you're in big trouble. And it'll come through your intuition, and it'll repeat 3, 6, 12 times. It'll just keep repeating. You won't be able to escape it. Synchronicities, it'll pop up, and you're just like, really another book? Are you kidding me? And that's really the way I feel about them, because I'm happy when they're done. I really like meeting the readers who connect with the book, like yourself. But man, you got to understand, I make about 3 cents on the dollar compared to technical writing, and it's 10 times harder, but that the aspect of it I like is kind of like somebody, like the way these people will go to Everest and try and summit, right? It's just to say, hey, I did that, and it's physically there, and I can say, okay, I did that. But it's always hard, man. Everything about the spiritual life is hard. The divine coming in and feeling the love is not hard, but staying in tune and fulfilling your service mandate, it's hard, man. Like it's hard.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to, before we get into this stuff, Kimo. So, I these are very high level concepts, so I really want to boil them down and make them accessible for people who are listening to this, because I know that's ultimately all of our desire is ultimately to make these concepts complex, or I mean simple enough for people to understand and apply practically. And not everybody is in a position where maybe they can, I think nobody's in the position where they can take the path that Kimo has in his life to bring this awareness. But to I guess sum up what Kimo's saying, essentially right now we are in a pretty bad place, let's call it spiritually, energetically, whatever we will, where we have billions of people who lack awareness and connection to their souls, and as a result leave them very open to possession, if you will. And we're seeing the fruits of that in the world today. And so Kimo, you're proposing essentially that there are actions people can take and a path, if you will, to undo a lot of what we're seeing in the world. So maybe first you could walk through what these principles are. Is this for everybody? What is the actual process and practical things people can do to start?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me, they want a divine love in their heart and go about their merry way. And, the first thing, the qualifier is sincerity. You have to be sincere. And that's it. That's where I started, with sincerity. Yet, when I looked at everything, because people are asking me this question a lot, I distilled it down to three things. I was financially independent. I had a really strong physical and immune system. I had a really strong immune system and a really strong body. So I had physical health. And I drove myself to my spirit within, which doesn't need development or frequency rise. It is what it is, fully developed. But the spiritual side, I couldn't get to until my heart was turned on. And that was through seeding it with divine love. Because you cannot approach your spirit unless you love yourself. And I was so disciplined and hard on myself that I lost the concept of loving myself. And that would have taken too long. And so what happened is Divinity just put it in me and said, figure it out. And so I felt my heart shift over a 30-day period. And it was reworked, like there were hands in there reweaving it. And then it was like an antenna. I now had the frequency and I was attuned to it. And now it was up to me what I was going to do with it. And so through the fact that I was not like screwed up with finances, and I was not screwed up with ill health, it allowed me to focus on this spiritual part very effectively. And through my sheer drive and will, which I realized I had bifurcated my will over eons of time, and I had to recall all that back. And that took a few years to do that, which I didn't even know what I was doing. So for 6-7 years, I was dousing and pulling back my free will from all kinds of agreements and stuff that I didn't realize I made. And once I got to a certain amount of free will back in me, I was approached by these guys I tell you about that I've had conversations with that you can't see. And they told me, whoop, you just found a secret and don't tell anyone. And I said, well, that's encroaching on my free will. So I'm not going to make a deal with you that you'll leave me alone if I don't tell anyone, but I just continue on with my free will. And they were scared that I would blow the whistle on free will and how to do it. And so I actually energetically brought it back into me through a series of things, which I can do a course on. And that was, once I had a certain amount, they could not interfere with my will, my determination to penetrate into the inner sanctums of my spirit within. And they had blocked it, and a friend of mine seeded it in me and removed the block, and then I accelerated. And in 3 years, I did what took him 30 years. Because I had my finances squared away and my health squared away. I had no blocks. And so when I tell people I'll help them with their finances, I'm not going to give them money, but I'll tell them how to fix themselves. I'll help them with their physicality. And on the spiritual side of things, that has to do with sincerity. And I'll help them with that. But I'm starting to realize I'm not alone. I'm starting to meet other people that have these certain attributes about them that can really help people get past roadblocks. Because I can't do it all. My friend did it all. The guy was an absolute incredible master. But the guys like, it's too much work to try to for me to bring one person through all of it. Okay. It's too much work. And so it has to be divided out to a lot of other people. Anyway,
yeah,
I hope that answers it.
No, that's great. So on the issue of blockages, so you speak as if we all have a spirit, but there is a blockage which is almost intentional or done to us.
Yeah, it was put there on purpose so that we would forget. Our IQ is 100. We're dopes. Dogs are smarter than we are because they at least can sense things and get out of the way, and we can't. It was done on purpose. And the purpose of it was let's put it this way. Humans have the capacity to save the demons from themselves if the human can save themselves.
Okay. And is that something that you think is placed on all people from birth, or does that blockage happen through us when we experience trauma? What's causing?
I'll have to ask Bruce on this, but what I just said, I don't think has ever been said by anyone publicly before.
Well, so if you look at the meditative process, okay, until you get into the mysticism of it, you start leaving your body and seeing other realms and stuff like that, and coming into contact with the primordial essence of the divine or God. A lot of what you're doing in meditation is a deprogramming. So for the average person who goes to like a Vipassana retreat for 10 days, gets into it and becomes a Buddhist, their first 5 or 10 years of meditating will just be family and cultural deprogramming. And so there's a huge deprogramming process, right? It can happen more quickly through trauma, right? So, we always look upon trauma as a very negative thing, but from the perspective of higher consciousness, it can very often be a very, very good thing. So because if you're spiritually minded and that's what you want, the Christian paradigm of this would be, all these bad things happened to me so I could find Jesus. And it's true, I mean, they come to see it that way, and it's true. Okay, so they found a spiritual home. They found a direction through this religion. Very often in that religion, a lot of people who find their way to it, who are not born to it, it is a kind of a saving thing. It picks them up out of the gutter, that sort of thing. But the blocks are built into everything now. And this is really what the devil in us is about, and how they institutionalize these blocks now. Okay. So, I mean, you look at all the smart doing podcasts now out there, like the real smart guys, 160, 180 IQs, the quantum physicists and all of this. Mm-hmm. They're not really speaking about what Kimo Wasabe and I are speaking about. They're looking at the world in this subject-object relationship, whereas the spiritual is to break down that subject-object relationship, because it's really, really one thing. So, does that answer your question? I can't even remember what the question was.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying the blockage is formed by many ways, but ultimately it's seeing ourselves as separate from God. Would that be a way to kind of boil it down?
I often wondered, B.F. Skinner did these experiments, the baby in the box. He did it with his own daughter, famous American psychiatrist. And he wanted to discover some things about what socialization does. Mm-hmm. I wonder sometimes if you just took a baby and it was raised in the wilderness with 2 parents and not really taught anything other than the hunting and the fishing and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. I will bet you if you came into contact with that person, and I'll bet you that the natives were like this when the Europeans first got here, there was very little delineation between the imagination and reality. Like mythology and the real world were sort of fused together. Yep. Okay. And this is the way human beings are supposed to live. What have we done? We very, very deliberately severed it into subject object, where shamanism and spiritual lucidity used to be. We've brought in the psychiatrists and the pharmacology. And so, I mean, whatever you do in this modern society, don't raise your hand or draw attention to yourself, because all of the institutional forces will just come in and reinforce the blockage. Because the fact that you're having trouble might be indication that you're starting to break your block, and they'll come in and they'll reupholster it. They'll put new nails in, and they'll tamp it all down again, right? That's their job. But I'm not saying they're, again, we discussed all of this in my interview with you. Like my father working on free trade, they're not doing it deliberately, like, Montgomery Burns in a boardroom from The Simpsons. But it's just, they've been broken. They've accepted the program, and when you start to break program, the people around you who are programmed, they'll get very angry at you.
Yep.
They'll start to be very, 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 very hostile towards you, because you're breaking out, right? You're breaking out. Who are you?
Yeah, yeah. It feels. I've experienced that firsthand. It feels like Agent Smith in the
Yeah.
Matrix, right? The agents can just all of a sudden take over, and I've seen that with many people I love. In fact, I speak about that in several solo episodes. That and more in the context of cults, that many of the relationships we have are based on us agreeing to a world or framework that's been placed for us since birth, and the more things we can agree on, that denotes our level of friendship, right? Like, oh, we both like, the Edmonton Oilers, and we both vote for the Conservatives or the Liberals, and we both do this. So, but then when you step out of that, you realize a lot of friendships are very much conditioned upon us accepting the worldview as it is, right? And deviation from that triggers this response, almost like wakening the bear in people, where they come and lash out at you, right? And it's like a crab in the bucket type situation, where there's this instinct to pull you back in, and it's, I've had it with very loving and genuine and generally open-minded people, but certain topics, it triggers that response.
Yeah. 100%, man. 100%. That's exactly what it does. And you're really on your own when you set out for a true spiritual path. And that's the truth, okay? And nobody really tells you that, right? You don't know that in the beginning. And there's really no such thing as spiritual confederacy. Every waking person is an individual unit. You can see all the monks in a monastery together and everything, but that's just really another form of socialization.
Yep.
I think your best chance of finding divinity is in the real world, because that's where all of the vicissitudes in your life, in your timeline, that's where you're going to get hit, and you're going to get moved, and you're going to allow life to act upon you. When you go into a deliberately contemplative life, like a monastic life of some form, I always look at those as a spiritual vacation. Like, they're actually opting out of this life.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people in cloistered lives might find what I'm saying right now, if they ever come across it, offensive, but do a little self-examination. And how would they know otherwise? I mean, if they've been in whatever system they're in for the last 20 or 30 years, how would they know otherwise? Right? So
yeah. Well, Bruce, I think about that too. So the concept of the monastic life being a bit of a cop out, right? And you and I have both made similar life choices, in that I moved from Toronto to the middle of nowhere, off-grid ranch. You live in a beautiful area of the jungle.
So may I speak for a moment?
Please.
I don't mean to cut you off, but you look at the first 2 points of Bob's plan, financial freedom and health. So you've accomplished those in choosing the life you've chosen, without having to go out and get the $1 million in the bank as a security to relax a little bit because you're living in New York or you're living in Toronto.
Yep.
Another way of doing it is going off And I call it creating your own monastery.
Mm-hmm.
I've literally created a monastery here. Okay. I can I can do all my spiritual work up here, do all my worship, all my prayer, all my fasting. You know how hard it is to do a 2 or 3 week fast? You can't do a 2 or 3 week fast and be going into a job as a money trader on Wall Street or Bay Street in Canada. You can't. So point one and point two, you don't need to look, but if you eat the clean food around you where you live and minimize your purchases at the grocery store, your health will be okay. You're walking around in fresh air all the time, probably doing physical farm related work, also contributing to your health. It's not that you've achieved the millions of dollars and you've achieved that liberation Bob is talking about for people who stay inside the system, but you've done it another way.
Mm-hmm.
So you've actually created a situation where you can put a significant amount of your attention on the pursuit of the divine now. And that's no small thing. And whether you realize that consciously before I said it just now or not, I don't know. But now you know it. Okay? And that was in your life path. It's not an accident you find yourself where you are. That was in your life path. So you've planted the seed. Now the flower of spirit and soul are going to grow. Mm-hmm. They have to. I don't want to spook you, but the only thing that could really screw you up now is mating, the mate you choose.
Yeah. I introduced her to Kimo on a call. So Kimo, am I doing okay? How am I doing?
Don't ask.
Don't ask. You got to figure it out yourself.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what I say, because it will just be one piece of a gigantic puzzle, and it's really meant for you two to figure it out. And the reason people fall apart is because they learn to hate each other, and they build it into the relationship from the beginning.
Yeah.
So that's what you got to look at.
All right, I'll put that as a pass, but I have to be cautious. I'm just kidding. So Bruce, just to build on that. So I totally agree, and we've spoken about this a few times. You know, the fact that I live the way I do, it has been by design over years.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm able to not only just have time to contemplate these things, you know, where others are trapped in the rat race, you know, but also just by nature being close to nature, right? Like I go into hot walks and hikes in nature every day. Like I'm near bodies of water and forests, and we have bald eagles and deer and moose and bears all over, you know, lions and tigers and bears. You know.
Just the soundscape. The wind through the valley and the mountains, and the rain on your rooftop, birds chirping. Now remember what downtown Toronto was like. Brakes grinding, and the click, click, click of street lamps, and the general murmur of 1,000 useless conversations as you're walking up Yonge Street, you know, to hit a record CD store or a bookstore. It's just that soundscape gets to you after a while. The ambient sound around you is very important spiritually, as far as I'm concerned.
I totally agree, but one thing in my own life I've questioned is maybe I've unplugged too much. Like, you know, I rarely even go into the city. Well, I am in a little bit today, actually, the outskirts. But, you know, aside from seeing some friends a few days a week, like I'm mostly living my own path here, you know, with my lady, and it's pretty awesome. You know, there is a bit of isolation, but I worry sometimes. Maybe worry isn't the right word, but I wonder maybe I've cut out too much of the world from my life. You know, like maybe I am creating that monastery. You know, like
Starlink will remedy that.
Well, I mean, do you think we're called to be more involved in the day-to-day?
You're doing it now. I mean, you're doing a podcast, aren't you? You're just by doing the podcast, you're doing more than most people. You know what I mean?
Now, be happy with where you are. You start to seek out for more than where you are.
Yeah.
You're going to get more on your plate.
No, I'm happy. More, what do they call it? It's like survivor's guilt. Sometimes I feel that, you know. I see a lot of people in this, my friends still in the city, like they're paying like 4 G's a month rent, and
Yeah.
they're stressed all the time, and their neighbor called the police because their grass is 3 inches too tall, and there's gunshots everywhere, even though they're in the nice part of Toronto. And I'm just like, yeah, that must suck. They're talking about food being expensive, and I'm like, well, I grow my own food. I buy from our local farmers and barter, and everything's everything's awesome here. So that's more what I'm saying. Maybe I do feel like a survivor's guilt, but I think most people yet don't even realize that they're in a prison. Like, for me, I always felt the city it felt like a prison to me, so yeah.
Imagine how Noah felt after that the ark found land.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, it's all good. It's just something I thought, like, like I'm living a life of like a retired, I don't know. Yeah, like a retired farmer or something, whereas sometimes I wonder, should I travel more? Should I go out into the world more? Whatever. It's just something I ask,
There's nothing wrong with being industrious. I mean, having a trade, a craft, or an art goes along with a spiritual life as well. All the samurai wrote poetry in their spare time. True story. The Book of Five Rings is a masterpiece, and written by a nearly illiterate guy who wielded a sword, but it's a masterpiece. The samurai text, all kinds of things you could do out there, man.
I'm doing lots.
Find a breed of dog you really like and breed that dog. Breed ethically, so people can have good dogs. Stuff like that.
Yeah, we're breeding horses.
1,000,001 things you can do out there.
Yeah, we're breeding horses. We're growing food. We got a program to feed families. We're doing stuff. It's like I have a really amazing life. Actually, it's just more like, I'm mostly alone, and then I go just hang out with people who I think are, fairly spiritually aligned and, close friends. And I've just removed like almost all negativity. Like it's just not in my sphere of experience, and yeah, maybe it's a guilt. It's an appreciation most and foremost. Like I'm grateful every day. I thank God every day for my life. I'm super blessed. So,
good.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I guess switching gears, I should say. Kimo, I see you got it queued up here. 3 principles to gaining your soul back. Do you want to walk people through the 3 pillars and this concept of gaining your soul back?
Yeah, I was working with people one-on-one, and it's too slow, so I had to come up with a concept and what I did, and then I had to tell people about it, and then they started thanking me that how to do it, and but I don't have time to work with people one-on-one. Just more and more people are becoming aware, I guess, or interested, so I had to come up with a program, and I have some help putting it together, but it's right now it looks like a 4-week program, 2 times a week, where I'll take one principle, call it financial independence, and I just work people through it, and then let them go to go figure it out. There's a tremendous amount of information about financial independence, but there are some things about it, like how to be your own bank, how to take a 30-year mortgage down to 17 years without paying any more money than you do every month. Many things of this nature. How does the bond market work, the stock market work? How do swap deals work? What is the Fed doing? What are interest rates? Why does gold go up and real estate go down? There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes with this financial independence, so you don't get caught in these cycles, economic cycles, so that you're always protecting yourself. So that's a knowledge-based system to create a stability, a financial stability for yourself. And the second would be physical health. And again, that is a very strange topic to just talk people through over a 4-week period. And that would have to be 2 days a week, but they would have to be doing things. And it's the simplicity of it is you got to look at what you eat, and you just got to do replacements of what you eat. You can't just cut things off. Your body will drive you crazy. And then with the spiritual connection, well, that's really quite unique. That there is no program for that. That functions as the person needs based on what they're doing. you cannot access your spirit within if you're not doing something. You have to be a doer to get access to being. So that is done through a series of gifting and blessings and detanglements and realignments that are of a metaphysical nature, that is done through basically me sharing whatever I have obtained with the other person so that it resets them. That's the best way I can say it. People call it blessings.
Okay.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. That's the simplicity of it.
Great. Yeah, I love the simplicity of it. And yeah, to Bruce's point, you're not saying that, the Andrew Tate model where you have to have, 28 Bugattis and be a multimillionaire, right? In the first principle, you're saying basically, first and foremost, you got to just get out of debt, right? Debt is a form of not only a blockage, but a trap, right? A hook that, the parasites, whatever you want to call them, has over you, almost leverage over you. So, for me, that just means I've never... Oh, go ahead.
Money, the whole concept of money was given to us by beings that are not from Earth. It wasn't our idea. It was given to us. And so it's become this sort of witchcraft, and it's tricky, and it's full of dark connections. People can get connected to things in ways that can damage them, like the addiction to spending, addiction to gambling, addiction to drugs, and addiction to stealing. I mean, you got people who have a lot of money, but they're addicted. They're kleptomaniacs. The thrill of the steal. Mm-hmm. Then you have to get past the concept of money and commodity. And then you have to get past the concept of money and commodity and get off the idea that the government's going to save your butt, because they ain't going to do crap for you. They feed off you. You fund your own pension. I don't know if you realize that, but all your debts are securitized on credit default swaps, which makes a third party responsible for the debt. So when the bank lends the money to you, they sell that debt to, let's call it a hedge fund, let's call it a pension fund, and then that pension fund is investing employees' monies, like military people, into 401k IRAs. And who's holding the bag when everybody defaults on their loans and the pension fund is not getting that monthly amount of cash flow into them? It falls on the people investing their money, the employees investing their monies into the pension fund. So it's a way to shift responsibility. And where's the government in all this? Oh, they're up there writing laws to allow this to happen because they don't take responsibility for shit.
Yeah.
You fall out of the system, they'd rather see you dead than help you get back in the system.
Yeah.
Because the way it works is if they give you a helping hand, you're stuck there, and you can't, as soon as you try to get yourself back in the system with a job and a place and all that stuff, you're just going to be told no across the board. And if you do get a job, they're going to cut you off immediately. And now you're right back where you were, living on the street, trying to work a job, and you don't have a place to shower, and you walk in there stinky breath, and they fire you for hygiene because you're offensive to women who complain, who have the power in the corporate world now, and anything they say is believed, no investigation. Same in the military. So once you're kicked out of the system, to get back in it, you literally have to sneak your way back in it. It's really hard. And it requires a tremendous amount of determination. How do I know this? Because I freaking had to go through it. I'm going through it right now. To go from living in a camper for 3 years back into society where I have a place, a roof, a kitchen, no stinky breath because I can brush my teeth and I can wipe my tushy in a shower. I didn't have that for 3 years. I had to figure it out in bathrooms.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling you firsthand. Everything I tell you is firsthand knowledge. It isn't extracted from some stupid Drudge Report article written by somebody sitting in a room or a closet because they're at the work at home scenario for COVID for the last 3 years, making stuff up because they had to research it on the internet to figure out what they were going to write next. And that's the entire world of the internet. Bunch of second and third hand dealers of information.
Yep.
Called misinformation. Everything Bruce has written about, brother, tell you what, he had to go through it and experience it for himself and see it before he would write it down. He's not going to tell you BS and make something up just to fill a gap.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally everything I wrote about came to me. I didn't actually see Grays, but they were here when I was working with John Edmonds. I kept having this like copper blood portal opening. I knew they were here. Stuff was moving around. It's all real. It's all real. And another thing is like all of these public pensions and everything, if you're born in Canada or you're nationalized, we'll use Canada because Donnie and I are Canadian, Kimo. But do you think for a moment it's like a dividend of being a Canadian, like it's your corporate shares in the national resources and stuff like that, like the coal, the nickel, the gold, the softwood? No, that whole Canada pension plan is just what people put into it. There's nothing outside coming into it. They've basically taken all the resources of the country at a government and corporate level and just kept it all for themselves. And this so-called public pension is just basically what you put into it. It's like there's no resource sharing. I mean, Libya under Gaddafi was a better country than America or Canada now. He shared the oil wealth, free post-secondary education. If you qualified for admission to an Ivy League university in the United States, he would pay for you. And if you were married, your family and kids to go over there and study and get your master's or your PhD to come back and benefit, Libya. We don't share anything. It's like so self-centered now. These G7 capital-based countries, they're almost I almost call it capital cannibalism now. We're actually at the point where we're consuming each other.
Yeah, Hunger Games society.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, well, and I just want to add to that with on the financial pillar, Kimo. For myself, I've never ever been in debt, but I always felt the need to live well within my means. Even I was on my own by 18, 19, and I worked a construction job. Even then, I was saving half my pay. It wasn't that much in retrospect. During university, I lived on it was like $9,000 a year, like rent and food. I always felt that it was just very important to live as part of, who I was. But I found almost nobody else I knew was like that. People would always go into debt and want to live outside of their means and kind of extending that. And now I've seen the fruits of that. Now a lot of people are experiencing, it's not hyperinflation, but it's rampant inflation in Canada. Well beyond what they're reporting. And so I see a lot of people getting pinched and burned. And so I think that message is very clear. Like, you don't have to become a multimillionaire. It's just whatever your income is, the key is to create as much freedom as possible in whatever you do for work, and also to get out of debt so that can't be used against you in the future. Would you say that's maybe an accurate summation of why that's so important?
Yeah. When you get out of debt, you detangle yourself from a lot of witchcraft that surrounds money. I just tell it to you straight. If you dig into the creation of money, it gets so dark that I have to peel away from it. I can't go to the bottom of the root of money creation because it led to these interdimensionals and them controlling everything. And that's how I came up with the term controllers. And as far as technology goes, that was impulsed into certain people throughout the last couple hundred years. And everything that we have has been given to us, and it's being sustained for us because we're such idiots that we go into the work environment, we're more concerned in a 2.5 hour day of what we can have to do in the next 5.5 hours, how we can screw our coworker over to take their job, their position, or get that raise over them and take credit for what they've done. That's the corporate world. And so how does anything get done? It's definitely not being done by humans.
Well, even
It's
the term
it's being done
corporation,
by
these are dead
automation is being
things,
brought in.
right?
What?
So even the word corporation, right? These are dead entities, right? It's a
They're dead
death
entities.
cult.
It's a dead end.
Yeah.
And you look at who's running the world. It's very simple. Look back at COVID. Look back at the vaccine. Look back at
sorry, we can't
the
talk about that on
shutdowns.
YouTube.
We got
Can't talk about that on
corporations.
YouTube.
Yeah, it was corporations did that. The government doesn't have any power.
Yeah.
Shoot, we're ruled by a bunch of bartenders.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
I can't wait till the strippers start showing up and running things in the Senate. I mean, they do in the background, but wait till they're wearing their dresses and whatever.
Yeah.
Telling us what for and how smart they are, babbling their head off. They sure look cute, but after that, they're not useless.
Yeah.
So who's running the Senate? Who's running Congress? Who's running the White House? Who's running the show over there?
Yeah.
I've been told it's reptilians.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
And how you find out is you look in their eyes. And if they get a cat eye in them from a blink or something, then you know what's going on. Or if their throat starts jacking around in weird shapes.
Yeah, we went through those videos together. There was a
Yeah. Those are real things. Because where these things reside is in the back of the neck. And women are 10 times more susceptible to it than men because they have a broader spectrum of energetic wherewithal in them, and they have an ability to multitask at a level that a man can't. A man is like an ignorant moron around a woman.
Yeah. Yeah. But
So
unitasking is when good stuff gets done, like fine craftsman. Multitasking is nonsense. It's just to fit into these corporations. It's just, it's just complete nonsense. Sorry to interrupt there, Kimo.
No, that's okay. Go on, Bruce.
No, I had a difficult. I was like pretty much like real down with all this feminism stuff. I was starting to have my doubts and everything, and then Corinne, from the book, Donnie, she set me straight. I mean, I had some conversations with her that didn't make it into the book, and she was telling me about these ritual societies, and she was saying, Bruce, you got to understand, the women are 10 times more cruel than the men. I said, I don't believe you. And she convinced me. She has a lot of data. And then I started to think, does this explain why they've been ramping up feminism and everything? And absolutely it does. And I don't want to sound like some caveman here. I'm not telling Western women to start wearing burqas or anything like that, but realize we're a human race up against a third party force, and we've been convinced we should be fighting each other.
Yep.
And and this is a big thing in the world right now. Huge.
Yeah, and it's so sad. Like at a period.
You want to know
where
something funny,
Donnie?
Ahead, this is really funny. Do you know what ISIS fears the most to fight up against? A platoon full of women. It scares the crap out of them.
What? Why?
Because they're geared towards fighting men. Men fight men. Men are jihadists. Men are the show. Women sit in the back room. But when women go to war and they start fighting these jihadi kind of guys, they're 10 times more cruel. They are absolutely merciless, and they shoot straight.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
So, Kimo, I got about 20, 30 max left. Do we want to, where do you want to go here? Do you want to do just kind of an overview of all of the pillars? Do you want to dive deep on one and pick it up on another stream?
Well, I'll just do this right now on the debt one, since this is a little thing I did today earlier to try to, not to entice people into a 4-week program, but that's what it leads to. And so I'm just going to go over it really quick. Back in the day before Richard Nixon in the 70s took us off the gold standard, the dollar was called a silver certificate. It was worth $1 You could go in and trade it for an actual silver dollar. The silver dollar today is worth $30, but that $1 right there is probably worth half a cent if you're lucky. What happens in the modern, capitalistic world? because we've expanded into other countries. This system I'm going to explain to you very easily and quickly. The idea of debt. Notice that these debts, okay, on the credit card and student loan debts, if you go through bankruptcy court, you can't get rid of them. But if you go through a bankruptcy court with a car loan and a house, they sell it and pay off your debts. So you never get out of jail free card doing a bankruptcy. Okay? Credit default swap. That's where the bank bundles up a bunch of loans, whether it's a loan, a stock, or a bond. It bundles them up and gives them a classification based on what they think how creditworthy the bundle is, and they sell it. Why do they do that? Because when the bank loans the money to the person, the bank needs to resupply their money, and they don't want to be liable for losing that money because the person doesn't pay the loan. So what they do is they continue to collect the money from the person, and they keep some for themselves, but they go out on the market and they sell it. And when the buyer of that, typically it would be like a pension fund, and then the investors, like you and me, who put our money into the pension fund, if all these borrowers stop paying, you and me who buy into the pension fund lose the value of our pension fund, and those guys who run the pension fund don't do anything. They just keep making money, and the bank doesn't lose anything either. They just go out there and they get the asset, the car, the home, the belongings. So it's like a double dip for the bank and a free ride for the investment agency. And you basically, as a person who has debt, you're funding your own pension, whether you know it or not. And the federal government wrote the laws so that, and all the governments that follow our program, so that they're not responsible for any of it. Now, how do they value the securities? They use derivatives. It's a calculus. And what it does is it looks into the future, and in a perfect world where everybody pays their debt, and then they add a little equation in there for how that security is rated, which means how confident are they everyone's going to pay their debt. And they look into the future, and then what they do is they say this will have certain amount of value into the future, and they sell it again for a higher price. And that goes on and on and on. And we are 1.6 quadrillion in derivatives. Imagine trying to pay the interest on that.
Did you say quadrillion or trillion?
Quadrillion.
Yeah, I thought you said trillion. I was going to say
I did. I did 1.68 quadrillion, and China is like 1.72 quadrillion.
Yeah,
all right.
It can't be paid off. Yeah.
It's not payable. And this is because of the derivatives, because it keeps reselling the same security over and over and over.
But the way the Uniform Commercial Code's been rewritten is the secured creditors have more right to even the savings in your bank account than you do. The law.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Once you put your money in the bank, it's written that it's not yours.
Yeah.
And so if the bank needs to bail itself in, it can take everybody's money in their accounts and get away with it. And the government isn't going to do anything. They'll hold some meetings and tell the CEOs, you bad boys, I'm going to embarrass you. Now take your private jet and your big ass bonuses and get out of here. And by the way, fund my campaign. That's it. So
and every time I go to the bank now and withdraw cash, if they make you feel like you're like in Canada, they make you feel like you're like committing a crime. Like they're like
you're stealing
nervous and whispering, and they're like, "Why do you want it? And are you sure you want it? And are you of sound mind?"
Broke, they're absolutely broke. The whole system's broke, and all the Federal Reserve can do is to continue to print money. That's all it can do. And it's doing it for America and Canada and Mexico and South America and Africa and Europe. You know how many countries the Fed's just printing wild ass dollars for? It'd blow your mind. And they're a 5-member family corporation. They're not affiliated with the government.
Yeah.
So they have no responsibility to disclose anything to the Congress or Senate.
But what's the way out? Like, I think many people know the basics of the. Oh, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So getting out of debt. I can't tell you how to do it because some of the stuff I tell you, it's totally legal, but I'm going to get a lot of crap for it. So you got to. It's $60, 4 weeks, 2 times a week, and I'll tell you how to do it. I'll show you how to do it. It's up to you to do it, but it has to be done on a member basis because there's some protections in having some form of a membership. than because it's private versus open to the public.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, here's one. I have never done this, but searched how do I reduce my 30-year mortgage loan to 17 years without increasing my monthly payment? I've never searched that, but if the answer pops up, I'll be totally surprised. And the reason is because the 10-year bond, the Treasury bill, follows the mortgage securities because people don't live in their homes more than 10 years, or they refinance out of it. So the 10-year bond is tied to the mortgage. So they figure you're only going to go 10 years, so why tell you how to pay it off in 17 on the 30-year note? It behooves you to take the 17-year program and paying off the 30-year note, even if you only live there 5 years. You have more equity in the home when you sell it than you would if you just did the 30-year term. All right. So will the government social programs help me if I falter? No, they will not. They have obfuscated their entire idea of being responsible for anything other than making us responsible for everything. You don't own your car. You don't own your home. You don't own the land you're on. You don't own crap because you're nothing but a trustee to all of it because you keep getting taxed on it every year and you don't own it. Mm-hmm. The only way you can really outright own something is called land by allodium, and you cannot have any easements on that land, and you have to do it through court. And that term was removed from Black's Dictionary, I think, version 4.
Yeah.
It's still in the books, but they don't want you to know about it.
Yeah.
Not even American Indians have sovereignty because they've allowed power and water onto their properties.
Yep.
Because they don't have the wherewithal to do it themselves. The rest of this here, I'm not going to talk about it. You can just read it if you want. I don't need you to get striked in trouble.
Yeah, I'm still on YouTube. I can cut it if we need to, but.
So I got out of debt. I had to learn about it. I did a Dave Ramsey course. I figured out how to allocate funds.
Yeah, he's great.
And even people. What?
Dave Ramsey's great. I used to watch his show just because I found.
Yeah. The only thing he's good about is getting out of debt. That's the only thing he's good about. When you get into his investment instruments and retirement programs, he's out of his mind.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to tell you that because you're going to. He's looking at he's deriving that even though you have the downfalls, you have the upturns, and if you just stay in the program 40 years, you're going to be on the upswing at the end of the day, if you're lucky. You don't want to be lucky. You want to be knowing, not guessing. So the information I have is worth 100. It will save you a minimum of 100,000 over a 5-year period, and it will save you millions over your life, and to make you a millionaire. It's a very simple formula. I have been litigated against it for 16 years in court. It's rock solid. They tried to penetrate me in every way, and the judges failed. So I don't want to go through that crap again. So you got to join the club for me to tell you. And that's part of gaining your freedom back. The whole idea about getting your soul back is being free. If you're not free, your soul will not join you because your soul is free. Why would it want to be imprisoned? It's not stupid. It's smarter than you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I have to impart on the basics of Principle 1.
Okay. Get out of debt. The whole economic system is a black magic pyramid scheme, house of cards. So you want to get out of it now.
Yeah.
Well, it's impossible to fully get out of it. Like for me here, I have.
What did Jesus say?
That.
Jesus said this. Yeah, Jesus said this. Give to Caesar what is Caesar, and give to God what is unto God. Well, that's a very dicey thing because the Catholic Church is playing God, and you got to give them alms to go to heaven. What are alms? You got to give them money. All right. Now,
pay tribute.
There is oh gosh. Yeah, I'm just going to tell you this. You can get free of the whole system. You really can. I did it. It's a simple formula, but I'm not going to tell it. You got to be part of the club to tell it because I just don't need you getting strikes and stuff like that. There are listeners out there. They listen. What do you think Trump is in trouble for? He's in trouble for doing what is absolutely legal, which all the corporations do, and he's getting in trouble for it. Because the American public is really the jury on this New York City case of Trump and his bank dealings to do real estate development. He did nothing wrong. There are no witnesses against him. All the banks said that he did a good thing. They made tons of money. They would like to do it again with him. He's a great bet because he knows what he's up to and how to structure things. And the judge is refused a jury and made it a public hearing, and he's crucifying Trump illegally. Yeah. It's a political hack.
Yeah. And you don't even have to like Trump to agree with that. It's about democracy. It's about, what's right. And quite frankly, if they can do it to him, they can do it to anybody.
Yeah, he has the money to fight it, and we don't.
Yeah, my opinion on I think they're setting Trump up to be the savior, right? He's going through like the persecuted dark night of the soul.
No, that's not true. You can say that all you want, and you can believe that, but that's not true.
You don't think he's going to get reelected?
No. Obama was the black savior. He was the savior. Go back. You weren't in America then, but back in the day when Obama was running for office, people felt him. It was at the level of he's the savior. He's going to save things, reconcile the blacks, make them equal to the whites, and bring harmony, peace. And that he got a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yep.
For doing what? Getting elected. None of it happened.
Yeah, I actually did an episode called The Savior Complex, and in the intro, I played clips of Obama during the campaign where they spoke about him like he was a religious figure.
You want to know who else they spoke about like that on the campaign trail? Adolf Hitler. Yeah. Go back and look at the reels. He came in, it was like the Germany savior.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the same.
He took that World War I deal, the Treaty of Versailles, and basically freedom of it and brought him into a new era and then conquered the world. At least he tried.
Yeah, it's more, I guess this is what my point was. They're very clearly and objectively persecuting Trump well beyond what would be reasonable in a democratic society, right? They recently took him off the ballot in Colorado. So then what that does is it signals to his base and to others that Trump is being persecuted, right? And then as a result, every time they put him through another court case or do something, he gets more support, right? So that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, and they're also trying to create the psychology that you're supporting a bad rotten egg, and if you want to support this guy, we're going to do the same to you. They're making an example of him, and he's not the only one. They took everybody on January 6th and threw them in jail. They're all political prisoners. I mean, that was I don't want to get into it. It's not worth it getting into it. It's the human drama, and it truly ain't worth it. And if you want to keep going down those roads we call the conspiracy theories, you're wasting your time, and you just get in trouble, and you don't make any friends, and you end up with the mix of everybody else out there slinging shit, finger pointing, and not finding their own personal self-value and self-worth.
Yeah, amen, brother. I got about 10 minutes left. Do you want to go through the other two principles, or whatever?
No, I haven't really fleshed them out. I've been working on this financial one and the physical one, and the physical one is just all right. All right. On the physical side of things, if you're going into middle and old age and you're overweight and you're diabetic, maybe you're eating wrong. If you're going into your middle and age from your 20s and 30s and you have a Pillsbury Dough body, maybe you should get out and walk. If you're in your teens and you can't pay attention for more than 3 to 5 seconds, maybe you should stop watching TikTok. Mm-hmm. The physical health has to do with what you're putting into your mind in order to be responsible for the gift of the golden body that keeps producing the golden egg that allows you to get out of bed every morning and see the world. Take care of the goose.
Yep.
It can seem like an overwhelming, complex thing. There's so much information out there and people telling you how to do it. I learned that the first thing you can do is just get out and walk. Walk a mile every day. Maybe 2 miles, maybe 4 miles. Who cares? Get out and do something every day. If it's a cold environment, then go down to the treadmill and do a mile on the treadmill every day. From there, your body will start telling you naturally what it wants to eat and what it doesn't want to eat. That takes about 90 days. So your lifestyle is really doing some kind of movement, doing some kind of movement with your body. Could go to a pool. Doesn't matter what it is. Over a period of time, you start to tune these things in a healthy and non-combative way with yourself. And so you naturally fold into them. As that occurs, then you start to dress a little better because you got your debt out of your hair and you got a little extra money and you buy some nicer clothes. And you start acting responsibly and respectfully for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things that are necessary in order for the spirit to come forward so it feels like it's being treated kindly. It's called self-love. That opens the avenue to connecting to your soul. And that whole program is, I'm not going to put that out in the public. Mm-hmm. Everything will go against people and to stop them from doing that. Mm-hmm. It's not a secret. It's really simple, but I just don't have the luxury to tell anyone because it will close that avenue off, potentially, by ones who don't want it open.
Okay. Well, yeah. I gotta wrap things up here.
All right, that's good.
Heading out, but yeah, I want to thank you very much, Kimo, for coming on today. Thank Bruce as well for hopping in. That was a fun surprise. Yeah, and Kimo, we'll do it again soon. Yeah.
All right.
I'm gonna close down the stream and I'll say my goodbyes offline.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Thanks for inviting me.